In Arena, you were just a minor member of the Imperial Court who faced off against the immortal Jaeger Tharn. In Daggerfall, you got to determine the fate of the Iliac Bay. In Morrowind, you had to take down a living god.
What a fool you are. I'm a god. How can you kill a god?
In Oblivion, you protected the world from the Oblivion crisis.
Close shut the jaws of Oblivion.
And in Skyrim, you discovered that you were the legendary Dragonborn.
Poor baby born, please don't cry anymore, 'cause your mommy is here, baby born, baby born. Just like a real baby, she's wet her diaper. Baby born, baby born.
The Elder Scrolls and later Fallouts were some of the widest and most accessible open worlds one can throw themselves into. There are other games you can argue the worlds were deeper and better expressed. Some people even go as far as to say as the Elder Scrolls and the later Fallouts were like the world's biggest kiddie pools, 1,000,000 miles wide but a foot deep. Regardless, if that's true or not, the accessibility allows just about anyone to jump into these virtual worlds with little to no knowledge required from the former entries in the series. People can just pick up these games and play, feeling like they're a part of the world. One of the main reasons these games endure for so long is partly because of their open world nature. That'll get you about 300 hours, but what gets them to the 1,000, 3,000 hour marks is because they often release with a creation kit, which is more or less a simplified version of the developer tools for making the game. From there, mods are born. From a 30 to 60 hour standard game experience stretches thousands of hours. While we come to these games for their open worlds, the world itself often doesn't create a compelling experience. An empty world without objectives or an overt story feels soulless and not really lived in. Nobody wants an empty world. Thankfully, the Elder Scrolls and Fallouts feature a world that is not just pre-generated, but also has a great deal of handcrafted content. It's a well-documented fact that a majority of the players, once dropped into the game world of an open Bethesda game, will often just trot off in a random direction and start exploring. The exploration of the world creates a feeling known as immersion, but being immersed is what sets these games apart. Most people can sit down and get lost in these worlds easily, and that's their strength, is that accessibility I mentioned earlier. We can argue about how they're dumbing down or not dumbing down certain elements that niche gamers want. I'll refer you to my Power Fantasy video, linked in the video description, for more info on that. Despite such claims, what people think of as the soul of the Elder Scrolls or late Fallout games is in fact the ability to be immersed in the world. No matter how much immersion one can have early on in the game, if the game itself isn't compelling, then no one would have given it a chance. So what makes it compelling? Well, the same thing that sells the game. The main quest, aka the premise. Only a tiny portion of the players who will ever pick up an Elder Scrolls or a Fallout game will obediently follow the main quest, do everything they're told to complete the game in about 15 to 20 hours. And a tiny fraction of those players will then quit the game, stating that it's too short. But most players you look at, they'll see that open world, and after one or two steps on the main quest will peel off of it and explore. That's the point. The main quest is always there. It waits for players, which is kind of awkward when you think about it. Bethesda uses the gameplay in these parts of the world as set pieces, but those set pieces never advance when the player isn't there. So a villain may be moments away from total victory, but he'll wait for the player to get there. Because these are massively open worlds, the villain may be waiting 20 minutes or 200 hours, but the main quest always waits. The premise both sells the game and gets people invested in it, but from there, the open worlds that Bethesda crafts just kind of take over. As mentioned earlier, a vast majority of players don't follow the breadcrumb trail of the main quest, instead choosing to go off in a random direction and explore. So the question is, what keeps people invested in the world beyond the initial exploration phase? Well, agency is given to the players in the form of factions, side quests, and other content that isn't actually tied to the main quest, but is explored by players as a consequence of the main quest driving them there. In games produced by other developers, most often the main quest is the game itself. For example, in Final Fantasy games, you can have a world to explore, but you'll find that if the main quest hasn't directed you to a certain area yet, you'll be unable to take advantage of what that area has to offer. In this sense, side content is not the main draw of the game. This is inverted with the Elder Scrolls and later Fallouts to where the best content in the game is contained within those micro stories, those side quests. And yes, the miscellaneous content where a quest isn't taking place, but there is environmental storytelling going on. And that happens more in Bethesda games than people give it credit. Content that in your average game by the other developers I just mentioned, that content would be considered unneeded fluff and be one of the first things cut. In your typical Bethesda Open-World, the main story is the fluff. This became apparent in Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind because that was the first Bethesda game that made the ending cutscene revert to the original game space. The ending is not truly the ending. After Rajura says, "The people look to you for protection. Monster and villains, great and small, still threaten the people of Vardenfell. Enemies and evils yet abound, but indomitable will might rid Morrowind of all of its ills." And then you're standing there in front of Azura in the game world once again. The cutscene over. Your game not over. Your character is encouraged to continue exploring, to do all the side quests, to finish all the guilds. The game hasn't ended just because you have triumphed over the main quest. That's because the main quest is unneeded fluff. It just existed there to get your attention, to get you into the world. Now you're that world's champion. What you gonna do? In these games, we've got some of the best micro stories ever told, and quite frankly, people like myself can't even be bothered to touch the main quest content for maybe 100 hours. I've had countless people tell me the same. They've sunk several hundred hours into Oblivion or Skyrim and never finished the main quest even once. This is honestly typical. And beyond my first playthrough of all the games, I use the alternate start mod to subvert the main quest until I've established my character. I find that it really helps with my own internal light role-playing. The epic quest to save the world is what draws people in, but they stay for the world. For a company like Activision that wanted to sell the next Call of Duty every year from a revolving door of developers, this gameplay concept would be a nightmare. They don't want you to keep playing their game after the season is over. They want you to play just enough to be like, yeah, I liked that game. Oh, the new one's coming out. I gotta buy the new game and the new season pass. But Bethesda's open worlds can draw players in for multiple years, with community-built content drawing it out further and further, meaning quality over quantity. So where does the main quest fall into this? Well, it usually doesn't. I'm not even joking. Aside from a couple exceptions here and there, the main quest is usually ignored by modders completely. If you have the opportunity, check out the World Eater Beater mod for Skyrim. It's rather funny. It's made by TrainWiz. From a writing perspective, the main quests have been getting progressively worse as Bethesda's been creating newer and newer games. My criticisms for each game grow larger and larger, but despite it all, the soul of the open world gameplay experience is still there. Their talented developers keep creating more and more content for me to explore. The hidden content, the unique items, the Easter eggs. It's all there where I can waste hours upon hours on. Other people disagree, but what stems from this in general is something we should all ask ourselves. What are we looking for in our games? I personally play a wide array of games, not just Bethesda Open-World games. I know most of the people on this channel don't care about anything else. I play first-person shooters and third-person action games. I play retro platformers. I play adventure games like Snatcher. In fact, tomorrow I'll be comparing Snatcher to Fallout 4. Keep an eye out for that. The point is, some people won't even touch a non-Bethesda game, and other people will play other games, but they won't touch a Bethesda game after Morrowind or Oblivion, citing that the RPG mechanics aren't to their liking or the story for Skyrim was asinine. And I won't disagree with them on that point. But through it all, when you ask someone what they liked most about a Bethesda title, the main quest seems to be brought up the least. It seems to be the main stories only exist because they're expected to. Because if they didn't, someone out there would go, well, what's the point of the game then? But at the end of the day, with Bethesda Open-World games, I think we find our own point in the game. Some people want to turn them into a survival sandbox with mods. Other people want to role-play their characters from scratch until death. Some people are goal-oriented and want to get all the collectibles they can. Legacy of the Dragonborn? Hell yeah. My point is, we're all looking for our own path in the game. And while the main quest is important in establishing the premise of the game, once the premise has been established, you can lose yourself in the setting. And I think that's where Bethesda excels. Everywhere from Daggerfall to Morrowind to Oblivion to Skyrim, they have excelled at giving us an exceptional setting in which to lose ourselves. So I'd like to ask you all a question. What was your favorite moment? At what point in a game created by Bethesda Game Studios, not talking about Bethesda Softworks, the publisher, a game made by Bethesda Game Studios, what was your favorite moment? Which one do you remember most clearly and most plainly? What is a specific soundbite? Was it a whole scene? Was it a quest? What was that one moment where you knew that you really loved this game? Put it in the comment section, please. And like or dislike the video while you're at it. Check the social media links for more content, and I will see y'all next time.